The moment Mrs. Varela asked why we were not dating yet, the whole dinner table went silent, but the loudest sound in the room was my heart realizing it had been waiting years for someone brave enough to ask the question I was too afraid to answer. I looked at my best friend, Maren, sitting across from me in the golden afternoon light, her cheeks turning pink as her fingers froze around her glass of lemonade, and for the first time in 7 years, I wondered if every laugh, every late-night call, every saved seat, every quiet look across crowded rooms had been something more than friendship all along. Before we go deeper into this emotional story, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Hub if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the kind of love that waits patiently until two hearts are finally ready. My name was Arman Hale, and for most of my adult life, I had been very good at pretending. I pretended I was fine when my father left our family without warning. I pretended I did not care when people chose others over me. I pretended I was happy being the reliable friend, the safe choice, the person everyone trusted but no one truly chose. And most of all, I pretended that Maren Varela was only my best friend. Maren and I met during our first week of college, under the kind of bright September sky that makes everything feel possible. I was sitting alone outside the campus library with a broken backpack zipper and a sandwich I could barely afford. She appeared beside me like sunlight with a messy bun, paint on her sleeve, and a confidence I had never seen up close. She asked if the seat was taken, then sat down before I answered. That was Maren. She entered people's lives gently but stayed like a promise. Over the years, she became my emergency contact, my first call after job interviews, my partner for grocery trips, my unpaid therapist, my loudest supporter, and the person who knew how I took my coffee without asking. When my mother got sick during our final year, Maren sat beside me in hospital waiting rooms and helped me study flashcards between doctor visits. When her first serious boyfriend broke her heart, I drove across the city in a rainstorm just to sit with her on her apartment floor while she cried into a blanket. We never said we loved each other in the way people say it in movies, but it lived in every action, every sacrifice, every quiet moment when one of us showed up before being asked. Still, life has a cruel way of teaching cautious people to keep their hearts hidden. I had watched love destroy my mother when my father walked out. Maren had watched her older sister's marriage collapse after years of lies. We both believed love was beautiful for other people but dangerous for us. So we built a friendship strong enough to survive anything, then carefully avoided asking if it could become something more. That Saturday afternoon, Maren invited me to her parents' house for a family dinner. It was not unusual. Her family had unofficially adopted me years ago. Her father, Raphael, called me son whenever he handed me a plate. Her younger brother, Teo, teased me like I had been born into their family. And her mother, Isadora Varela, had the kind of warm eyes that could see secrets before people spoke them. Their house sat on a quiet street lined with jacaranda trees, and the whole place smelled like roasted chicken, garlic rice, fresh bread, and lemon cake cooling near the window. Sunlight poured through the dining room curtains, making everything glow. It was daytime, bright and ordinary, which made what happened feel even more shocking. Some life-changing moments do not happen under moonlight or in storms. Sometimes they happen at a family table, between passing bowls of salad and pretending your heart is not shaking. At first, dinner was normal. Teo complained about his new job. Raphael told the same fishing story he told every month. Maren rolled her eyes at him, and I laughed because I knew exactly when the punchline was coming. I sat beside Maren's grandmother, who kept putting extra potatoes on my plate because she said I looked too thin. Maren kept reaching over to move the water pitcher closer to me, and I kept pretending not to notice the small tenderness of it. Then Mrs. Varela leaned back in her chair, looked between us with a smile too calm to be innocent, and asked the question that changed everything. She asked why we were not dating yet. Nobody laughed. Not at first. Maren stared at her mother like she had just knocked over a candle. I nearly choked on my drink. Teo leaned back with a grin, clearly enjoying the disaster. Raphael suddenly became very interested in cutting his chicken. The afternoon sun remained soft and beautiful, completely unaware that my world had tilted. I tried to joke it away. I said Maren had better taste than that, but my voice came out too tight. Maren smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Mrs. Varela did not apologize. She simply looked at us with the gentle firmness of a mother who had watched two people stand outside the same door for years, both too frightened to knock. After dinner, Maren disappeared into the kitchen with plates stacked in her hands. I followed because that was what I always did. We had cleaned dishes together in that kitchen dozens of times, shoulder to shoulder, moving around each other with the ease of people who knew each other's rhythms. But this time, everything felt different. The water ran. Plates clinked. Outside, children rode bikes down the street, their laughter drifting through the open window. Inside, neither of us knew how to breathe normally. Maren finally said her mother should not have said that. I told her it was fine. She asked if it made me uncomfortable. I said no too quickly. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt as if every wall I had built was suddenly made of glass. The truth rose in my throat, but fear pressed it back down. Because loving your best friend is not like loving a stranger. A stranger can reject you and disappear. A best friend can reject you and take half your life with them. I could survive embarrassment. I could survive heartbreak. But I did not know if I could survive losing Maren. So I smiled and said we were too smart to ruin a good thing. The moment I said it, something changed in her face. It was small, almost invisible, but I saw it because I knew her better than anyone. Her eyes dimmed. Her mouth tightened. She nodded as if I had answered a question she had been secretly asking for years. Then she turned back to the sink and said yes, of course, we were too smart for that. For the rest of the afternoon, she was polite but distant. She laughed at Teo's jokes, helped her grandmother pack leftovers, hugged me goodbye at the door, but the hug lasted 1 second less than usual. That 1 second haunted me all the way home. Over the next few days, Maren became busy. Not cold, never cruel, just busy. She replied to messages later. She stopped calling during her walks. She cancelled our usual Thursday coffee because she had plans with a coworker named Soren. I told myself I was being ridiculous. She had a life. She was allowed to be busy. But every quiet notification felt like a door closing. Then one afternoon, I saw her by accident at a small cafe near my office. She was sitting outside under a yellow umbrella with Soren, laughing at something he said. He was handsome in the effortless way some men are, with rolled sleeves and easy confidence. Maren looked beautiful in a blue dress, her hair catching sunlight, her smile bright but different. I stood across the street holding a paper bag with lunch I suddenly could not eat, and jealousy hit me so hard it felt like grief. That was when I understood the truth. I had not been protecting our friendship. I had been hiding inside it. I had called fear wisdom. I had called silence loyalty. But love does not disappear just because you refuse to name it. It waits. It grows roots. And when someone else reaches for the person you love, you finally feel how deep those roots go. That evening, I drove to my mother's house. She was watering plants in the front yard, wearing an old straw hat and humming softly. She took one look at me and asked what I had lost. I sat on the porch steps and told her everything. Not dramatically, not beautifully, just honestly. I told her about Mrs. Varela's question, about Maren's face in the kitchen, about the cafe, about the fear that had kept me silent for years. My mother listened without interrupting. Then she sat beside me and said something I never forgot. She said my father leaving had broken her heart, but it should not become the reason I never gave mine to anyone. She said pain can teach caution, but if you let it become a prison, you end up safe and lonely. Then she touched my hand and told me that losing love because you spoke the truth hurts, but losing it because you never had the courage to speak hurts for the rest of your life. The next morning was bright and warm. I barely slept. I wrote Maren a message, deleted it, wrote another, deleted that too. Words felt too small for 7 years of almosts. So I went to the flower market and bought sunflowers because she once told me roses made love feel too serious, but sunflowers made it feel honest. Then I drove to the art center where she taught weekend painting classes for children. When I arrived, the class had just ended. Kids were leaving with messy canvases and paint on their fingers. Maren stood near the doorway, wearing an apron stained with color, her hair loose around her shoulders. When she saw me, surprise crossed her face, followed by caution. I hated that I had put caution there. I walked toward her with the flowers in my hand and my heart beating like it wanted to escape. I told her I had lied in her mother's kitchen. I told her I was not too smart to ruin a good thing. I was too scared to admit the good thing had already become the best thing in my life. I told her I loved her, not suddenly, not because of one dinner, not because I was jealous, but because somewhere between library lunches, hospital waiting rooms, grocery aisles, and quiet Sundays, she had become my home. Maren did not speak at first. Her eyes filled with tears, and for one terrible second, I thought I had destroyed everything. Then she asked why I waited so long. I told her the truth. I said I was afraid that if she did not feel the same, I would lose her. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she said she had been afraid of the same thing. She said that when I joked in the kitchen, it felt like I had locked a door she had been hoping I would open. The pain in her voice nearly broke me. I apologized, not once but with everything in me. She took the sunflowers from my hand, looked down at them, and smiled through tears. Then she stepped closer and rested her forehead against my chest, and the whole world seemed to exhale. We did not kiss like people do in rushed movie endings. We stood there in the daylight, surrounded by children's paintings drying on tables, both of us shaking from the miracle of finally being honest. When she did kiss me, it was soft and careful, like two best friends crossing a bridge they had built together for years without realizing it. That Sunday, we returned to her parents' house for dinner. Mrs. Varela opened the door, looked at our joined hands, and smiled like she had known the ending before we did. Teo shouted from the living room that he deserved credit. Raphael hugged me so tightly my ribs hurt. Maren's grandmother cried before anyone even explained. Dinner felt different this time. The same table, the same sunlight, the same smell of garlic and bread, but everything had changed because we had stopped pretending. Maren sat beside me, her knee touching mine under the table. Every now and then, she looked at me with wonder, as if she was also trying to understand how something familiar could suddenly feel brand new. Months passed, and love did not ruin our friendship. It deepened it. We still argued over directions. We still laughed at terrible jokes. We still knew exactly how to hurt each other and worked carefully not to. Loving Maren did not turn life into a perfect dream, but it made ordinary days feel meaningful. Morning coffee became sweeter. Grocery shopping became a date. Silence became comfortable in a new way. There were hard moments too. I had to learn not to run whenever things felt serious. She had to learn not to assume distance meant abandonment. We carried old wounds into new love, but we carried them honestly. And honesty, I learned, does not make love weaker. It gives love somewhere real to stand. 1 year later, on another bright afternoon, I stood in the Varela family backyard under strings of white lights that were not yet glowing because the sun was still high. Maren wore a simple cream dress, and I held a small velvet box in my pocket. Her family had gathered for what she thought was her father's birthday lunch. My mother stood near Mrs. Varela, both of them pretending not to cry too early. When I asked Maren to marry me, I did not give a perfect speech. My voice cracked. My hands shook. But I told her that she had been my best friend when I did not know how to trust love, my safe place when life felt heavy, and my courage when fear tried to keep me silent. I told her I wanted every ordinary day with her, every difficult season, every family dinner, every quiet morning. She said yes before I finished. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Hub, because sometimes the person meant for us is not found in a dramatic stranger, but in the best friend who stayed through every version of our life. And before the ending, here is a special request. Comment "Love deserves courage" if you believe two hearts should never stay silent when they are meant to find each other. Years later, people would ask us when we fell in love, and Maren would always smile at me before answering. She would say it happened slowly, then all at once. But I knew the truth. Love had been there the whole time, sitting beside us at every table, walking with us through every fear, waiting patiently for one honest question in the middle of a sunny family dinner. And because her mother was brave enough to ask what our hearts were too scared to say, I stopped pretending, Maren stopped waiting, and two best friends finally became the love story everyone else had seen long before we did.